and I'm a medical marijuana user in the state of New Jersey.
So the diverse group that you'd be representing today would be the medical marijuana population?
Yes.
Okay, and what is the medical marijuana program?
In New Jersey, it's a program where licensed doctors are your medical marijuana doctors. It's membership, you get a card, you have to have one of 9 qualifying conditions, medical conditions for entry into the program. I have to see that medical doctor every 3 months to recertify.
And can you tell me about the process of becoming a medical marijuana patient? Like, how did you become a medical marijuana patient?
Sure. I had a gastro doctor who was also licensed to prescribe medical marijuana in New Jersey, and he recommended it to me. And you know, I was resistant to a lot of the treatments that he had, and so we tried it. It was you know, after trying 2 or 3 or 4 of the most popular treatments, he suggested to give it a try, and it worked very well. A new patient has to sign up for an appointment at a dispensary before they can start using the dispensary. In that appointment, you have an associate of the dispensary talk to you about medical marijuana in general, an education session beyond usually what you have with your doctor who explains it to you, who you get the license from. And then they talk about the specific strains that they have, the differences in medicine, per se, of the different marijuana that they sell. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's not medicine. Certainly, historically, for thousands of years, it's been used as medicine. It was in the Encyclopedia of Pharmacopoeia. In the 1800s and early 1900s, it was seen as a medicine. It was almost as popular as cocaine medications. And you know, people see it as a minority issue because so many people get arrested for marijuana. It becomes a street-level drug, back alley perception, rather than a medicine that's been researched, tested for the last 50 years in our country.
And I know personally, like, some of the misconceptions I heard are that it's more dangerous nowadays. What would you say in regards to that?
It's certainly a lot stronger than it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s. It's been genetically bred to be stronger. So dosage is lower. But, you know, other than that, there's really no difference. It just takes a lot less to be equal.
And as far as like different generations, I know we were talking about a family function that you were at where the older generation was kind of spoofing on medical marijuana card holders and not taking it seriously. What do you think, how do you think the generations perceive, the different generations, as far as like the millennials, Generation X, the baby boomers, how do you think they influence the medical marijuana community?
The baby boomers were taught by their parents living through an age with the demonization of marijuana, which was basically made illegal by the states by 1927 and illegal by federal law in 1937. And so they don't know enough to know the medical possibilities with medical marijuana. And so the problem is there are older generations that have many friends who are taking medical marijuana for medical ailments. And the younger generation, of course, are much more interested in it as an alternative medicine. Just taking something instead of a harder drug, or a drug that has more side effects, or a drug that's more toxic, or a drug that has overdose issues.
Have you ever known anybody to overdose on marijuana?
No, there has never been an overdose situation in the United States, and none known technically in the world. It's a very non-toxic drug. Yeah, you'd have to smoke probably 100 pounds, and your body just couldn't stay up to do that. You'd fall asleep, and that would be it. I think they're not aware enough, these older generations, of the medical advancements that have been done with medical marijuana. Certainly, Israel has been testing and spending a huge amount of money with medical marijuana. And now that we're in a situation where it's legalized in Canada, we have so many states that have legalized in America, and so many medical marijuana states. There's so much information out there that people don't know, and that can really change your perception if you look at information from now as opposed to information from the 40s, 30s, 50s that was so off point.
And how come that information was off point? Was there something with the research? Like, why wasn't there enough research out there in the 30s and 40s?
Well, we weren't really talking about it being a solution. We were looking at it as a problem.
Right.
We were seeing Hispanics coming up from Mexico, crossing the border, and bringing the marijuana culturally with them for their off time as an equivalent to marijuana, as an equivalent to alcohol or tobacco. And then certainly the African American civilization in the South was interacting with this Mexican immigration that was coming up north. So you had these groups that were social civil groups, and then you had liberal whites mixing in these jazz clubs and these blues clubs. So the demonization of the drug began, and it was grouped with harder drugs rather than being grouped with alcohol and tobacco, which is where it's more seen now by younger groups. Because of that grouping. So if you would look as alcohol as a gateway drug, meaning you take several steps forward beyond alcohol, it's much more popular than a soft drug like marijuana that people take and don't see any reason to keep going down a path like that.
Right. So
Not to mention the positive aspects of medical marijuana versus negative aspects of even alcohol, but especially hard drugs. One of the newest revisions to the New Jersey medical marijuana policy is not only adding other medical conditions as qualifying factors to the program, but also for opioid addiction as a treatment to get the person off of drugs. So it often happens that a opioid user begins by having a prescription from a doctor for a broken leg or a pain on their back. When their supply dries up, they look to the street for those pills, oxycodone, that sort of drug. Those pills are $20 to $40 on the street in the black market. So a bag of heroin, which is the same high for $10, $8, $12, it's a much more realistic fix, but that brings more overdose death, and also brings apart the talking about fentanyl, which is one of the newest drugs, one of the deadliest drugs, and is being put in to heroin to increase the high, but overdoses go through the roof at that point. Marijuana is not physically addictive. It has a toxicity level that's had no deaths in its history in America. So it's a much safer drug than heroin, and it gets people off of the drug, and then they can have a real life without that addiction. There's so many people out there who are addicted to opioids. I think education is critical, especially education about the fact about how non-toxic and how non-dangerous it is compared to other drugs, other pharmaceuticals that we're taking that we don't feel are dangerous. They're so much more toxic. There's so many more overdoses in these drugs. Lots of people are taking medical marijuana who didn't use the drugs before they were patients and are taking it for a reason that isn't about getting high. It's about treating a disorder, not curing often, but when you think about things like epilepsy, it does treat it so that you don't have the epileptic seizures. But people with MS, people with pain, there's so many issues that it treats that we really didn't know about.